was the first mold. We've still got it though. That was the next one. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode. So, something a little different here. We're going to dive back into what my family and how long my family have been involved in motorsport in South Africa. It all started, my great grandfather, he worked for Dunlop Tires in the 30s, and by the time the 1937 East London Grand Prix came around, he was doing all of their tires.
Our family have come back a long, long way in motor racing. It started in 1937 or circa 1937. My great-grandfather, he worked for Dunlop and ended up looking after the tyres for the 1937 East London Grand Prix, which is where my dad went with him, and he saw the auto unions and pretty much been interested in mechanical things that got him keen on motorsport and following it. His dad, Norman Kernick, he wasn't a racing guy. He wasn't a car guy. But it is what it is. And Dad used to work with, he used to be around his grandfather, who was kind of a mechanical guy.
John, after becoming a qualified pharmacist, to scrounge up half their money needed to have a go-kart. But his good friend had the other half of the money needed to have a go-kart. So they worked together and they built a go-kart, this is 1958, and it was revolutionary for its time because at that time, most go-karts had the pedals in front of the two axles, the tie rods, where they made theirs behind it and closer to the front of the cart. This was to fit the taller driver, as John's friend was tall. So how do you make two people fit one thing? You find a happy medium. And now all modern carts are set that way.
He and his good friend Donald Whittaker, they actually built a go-kart, and they were all down in Port Elizabeth, and they built a go-kart. And between a lot of them and their friends, they built the original go-kart track in PE. They used, as the story was told to us, they used to go on weekends and cut trees down and so on. And there you go. That's where it started there. We still have his original go-kart that he made along with his mate. Dad had the expertise, and his friend was a bachelor with he had a little bit of money to blow. Dad went on, built a second go-kart. He a later one, quite clever stuff actually when you look at them of the time. He moved up to Joburg, or was transferred from PE to Cape Town to Joburg for work, as he is trying to make his way through things. By the time they left Cape Town, there were three boys. Pierre, he raced his go-karts at Brickcore. There was a go-kart track in Isando, and he then attended a meeting of interested parties for Formula V, just early 64 into the beginning of 65. And in fact, we've still got the minutes of that meeting with the attendance. That was for him, is he was able to, as an average guy who was battling to pretty much keep his house and home and family and young family together, to go motor racing. The first car, the Capital, he bought for 900 Rand. And as we know, the story is well known. Mom wanted a sewing machine so she could sew and make some money and keep things going. Anyhow, Dad clearly won the fight. He had got the racing car, and somewhere along the line, Mom clearly got better than a singer. She got herself a fancy Benina sewing machine.
They later on went to sell the Capital Formula V, and he bought a Palliser Formula Ford chassis from Terry Townsend. He converted it to Formula V spec and raced that. the one race that actually classified him as a Formula Ford finisher. The timekeeper was confused, so he had to go and argue, but say, hey, I'm actually in the Formula V stuff, you know.
And in Lombardy East, our family was well known amongst our peer groups between the three brothers differing in ages, but we were known as the place of racing cars. There was just always stuff of motor racing. And our obsession clearly grew from that into anything mechanical. Peter had a relatively successful short go-kart stint, and then the karting was expensive. He got into Formula V's. Dad had, during that period, also raced Formula V's, then stopped in order to build that on our house and keep the family going as we were getting older and into high school. He then joined, apart from the Formula V management, he joined the Scrutineers Association, or he became a scrutineer with the remnants. Then they formalized SASA, South African Scrutineering Association, which was quite something, because that was our kids' tickets to go to all the big races, all the Grand Prix, 9 hours, you name it. Apart from Dad being a sports car club member, which meant we could get into the clubhouse enclosure and so on, we were now able to be around the VOMS enclosures, Kyalami, and into the pit lane and the pits and stuff. So all these types of things meant it was just everyday material for us to go to the races and be right where the action was. But back to Dad, they formalized the Scrutineering Association, and even till not so long ago, the logo for SASA was a stick man with a magnifying glass. And the old man got the inspiration of that from the TV series with Simon Templar, the undercover detective had in with racing. His dad, being a pharmacist, he was quite keen on brewing things. And when racing go-karts in the early days, they used to make their own fuel. The petrol crisis in the country, and then it was 1979, I think, if I remember correctly, 79 or 80, somewhere there, is Total sponsored Formula V racing. So he then did development research. We're using alcohol fuel called Benetrol. Now, what it meant is Peter couldn't score points in the racing championship because he's using some foreign rocket fuel. It was heavily alcohol based and so on. Anyway, they had to do the development work with that. And reporting back to Total with the results of what went on. And what I recall clearly is we're filling the car up with fuel. You whiff that stuff. Geesh, you had a headache of note. It was so full of alcohol. I don't know what else it had in it, but it was also very hygroscopic and just drew in water like crazy. So we'd open a tin, 20-litre tin for the day's racing, use it, and Sunday morning there were signs of water in it, and it ended up being used to kill the weeds in the garden.
I don't believe could have ever guessed what he had started by taking his son to the motor race and showing him what it's like. Yeah, and then for what my grandfather could believe how far it's come and evolved from showing his three sons motor racing and getting them involved and helping them. It's really gone a long way, and I think if you take it, 1937, just 2025, and we're still going strong. And the things we've done, the cars that have been involved in, the Chevrons, the Formula 2s, Formula 3s, the GT40s, everything has been incredible. And I wish I had met my grandfather for longer than I did, because I only briefly met him, and had said that my first walks were to him. He was in the rocking chair, which we have, and I got up and walked, 2 steps, stumble, boom, straight to him. And if only I could have met him for a better time, that and I could really understand who he was. But I think if you take He's either wherever he is, he's either looking smiling or he's looking shaking his head and like, whoa, you actually have gone too far here. So, well, but the journey doesn't end here.